So I know we have a bit of change of scenery here. I'm actually visiting my parents, and I don't really have a desk that I can use. And I'm kind of shy in this process that I do, so I like to kind of be secluded. But so we're just gonna talk high school sweetheart style, like we're on the phone, just getting the hot gossip around school right now. What are you thinking about? Oh, I don't know, just like murder and stuff. Oh my god, me too. So let's dive right in. Now this is the part of the show where I tell you that this murder involves children, if you didn't already deduct that from the name of it. The Babysitter Killer. This took place in Detroit, Michigan, in the 70s, which had a lot of crime. It was no secret that crime was kind of rampant in that area, but this took place in a pretty upscale community. Also, I hope you enjoy the scenery. My mom turned this immaculate room into a horse room after I moved out at 18, so here we are. So someone mentioned wanting to know about the Babysitter Killer because I had mentioned it in my first true crime video called OG Pedophile Island. They are also referred to as the snow killings as well, but someone mentioned they want to hear about it, so we're gonna dive right in. So February 15th, 1976, Mark Stebbins leaves an American Legion Hall where he's playing pool with his family. He's like, I don't really want to play pool anymore, I'm gonna go home watch TV. His mom says, okay, give me a call when you get home so I know you made it safe. The house was only 3 blocks away, so she didn't really worry about it. So he goes off on his merry way, and it's no secret that he never called. He never made it home. So 4 days later, February 19th, Mark's body is found in a parking lot on a snowbank in a parking lot near an office building. Now, what was peculiar about his body is that he was wearing the same clothes that he vanished in, and they seemed to be cleaned and pressed, and he was laying neatly on the snowbank with his arms folded across his chest as if someone was treating him like he was a doll and posing him, but they wanted his body to be found. There was no attempts to conceal it. He had been sodomized with an object and strangled to death. So December 22nd, 1976, 12-year-old Jill Robinson gets into an argument with her mother over dinner preparations, packs a bag, hops on her bike, and skedaddles. She basically runs away, and the next day her bike is found behind a hobby store. The day after Christmas, December 26th, her body is found near Highway 75 next to Big Beaver Road, and I believe it was inside of a police station. Her clothes were neatly pressed. She was still wearing her backpack. What was different about this murder than, the last one is she hadn't been sexually assaulted, and the babysitter killer's MO was usually strangulation, but Jill had been shot point blank in the face with a 12-gauge shotgun. Other than the gruesomeness of being shot point blank in the face with a shotgun, she was still laid in the snow, posed as if she was a doll, arms across her chest, and that's what led police to believe that they were dealing with the same killer at this point. It just didn't make sense to them why had Stebbins been sexually assaulted with an object and strangled, whereas Jill was shot point blank in the face with a 12-gauge shotgun. During all the documentaries I watched and all the research I did, they usually say, pedophiles, things of that nature, usually stick to one gender. Another detective I was researching on said that it was the 70s and, shorter haircuts were common on women. So maybe whoever was doing these murders thought she was a boy, and picked her up and abducted her, and when he realized she wasn't, that's what caused him to murder her in such a brutal way. I mean, point blank in the face with a shotgun. From strangulation to point blank in the face with a shotgun doesn't make any sense because strangulation's not messy. It's kind of, it's not quick either, so they're looking at their victim when they do it, whereas point blank in the face with a shotgun, you're creating an extreme mess, and it's very brutalizing. So January 2nd, 1977, 10-year-old Christine Malik, I think that's how you say her last name. I'll place it in some captions. I don't think I'm pronouncing that right, but that's how I see it. But she was last seen purchasing a magazine from 7-Eleven. She didn't return home, so her mother reported her missing 3 hours later. On January 21st, her fully clothed body was discovered by a mail carrier on a rural road in the Franklin Village area. And again, she was placed in the snow within view of nearby homes. It's like this person was not even attempting to cover his tracks, attempting to hide the bodies. Her clothes were neatly pressed. They were clean. Her arms were folded across her chest, again, like he viewed them as dolls and was posing them and not attempting to cover up their body, like he wanted police and individuals to find them. And just like Mark Stebbins, she had been smothered, but with Christine, when she was found, she had been killed 24 hours prior to that. Her body was, they said her body was still warm, it was still fresh. She was alive 24 hours prior to her being found dead. So now we move on to our final murder from the babysitter killer. So March 16th, 11-year-old Timothy King borrows money and heads on to a drugstore so he can purchase some candy. So he exits the store by a rear entrance, which happens to be a parking lot shared with another supermarket, and just vanishes. Now at this point, these murders are all over the news. People are terrified to leave their kids' places. They're wondering if it's the same person who could be responsible for this. So a widespread search for Timothy King starts. I'm talking, if I remember correctly, the local police department got 200 additional officers from other police departments around the area to come and help with the search, as well as the public coming forward and helping with the search as well. They were determined to find this boy. So Timothy's parents go forward and basically are begging and pleading for him to be released. They're asking him to be sent home. They don't care. They just want their boy home. And in this press release, Timothy's mother, I believe, says she just wishes Timothy would come home so she could feed him his favorite meal, which was KFC. So on March 22nd, 2 teenagers had eventually discovered Timothy's body in a shallow ditch. Like the others, his clothes were neatly pressed, they were clean, his fingernails were trimmed. He was posed as if he was a doll, with arms across his chest, his eyes were closed. He had been strangled to death and sodomized with a foreign object. When they did the autopsy on him, though, they discovered that his last meal was KFC. So whoever did murder Timothy was watching that press release at the time. So recapping on the MO of the babysitter killer. He kidnapped young children, obviously was a pedophile. He sexually assaulted them, but only sexually assaulted the boys. The female victims were not sexually assaulted. He would hold them captive for anywhere from 4 to 19 days, and then the usual death was asphyxiation, except for Jill Robinson, who for some reason he shot point blank in the face with a 12-gauge shotgun. Now on to our suspects. Now in the following weeks of Timothy King's death, Dr. Bruce Danto, who was a psychiatrist in Detroit and working on a task force for the case at the time, he received a poorly written, very littered with spelling errors, but guilt-ridden letter from someone that referred to themselves as Alan. Now, Alan claimed that he was a sadomasochist slave of his roommate, Frank, who is believed to be the babysitter killer. They also refer to him as the Oakland County child killer. We're just referring to him as the babysitter killer in this segment. So basically in this letter, Alan's pleading this psychiatrist. He's like, I'm losing my sanity. I'm being abused. I don't know what to do. And please help me. According to Alan, he has accompanied Frank on numerous occasions to go and scope out potential victims so that they can kidnap children. But he says he wasn't there whenever Frank actually abducted these children. He was only present while they were scoping out locations to pick up these children. He also said that Frank drove an AMC Gremlin, which is a car that was somewhat identified when Timothy King disappeared in that parking lot. But he got rid of it in Ohio and it was never seen again. So Alan states that Frank was traumatized again, this is in the 70s, he states that Frank was traumatized by his experience of killing children in the Vietnam War, and that he was waging war on upper middle class citizens for being sent to Vietnam and having to kill children. He said he wanted to watch rich people suffer for sending forces to Vietnam and getting nothing in return. So in Alan's letter, he instructs Dr. Danto to respond to his letter by publishing certain phrases in Sunday's Free Press edition. It's like a newspaper. So he basically states, I want you to print off, what does it say? It says, Weather Bureau says trees to blossom in 3 weeks. That's how I will know that you got my letter. That's how I will know that you are willing to work with me. If you publish that in Detroit Sunday Free Press, I will know that you are willing to work with me. So after the doctor does that, he receives a phone call from Alan, and Alan basically says, I am willing to provide you photographic evidence that Frank is responsible for these murders as long as I get a letter that states that I have full immunity from the prosecution of this trial by the governor of Michigan. So Dr. Danto agrees and sets up a rendezvous with Alan at a local bar, and, well, Alan doesn't show up and is never heard from again. So at the time, there was like a ridiculous amount of pedophiles operating within this area, this upper area, which is absolutely astonishing, but it was happening. So while I was waiting for my batteries for my camera to charge, I did a little bit more research on some sites that I had written down, just didn't get the chance to go to before I started filming, but I actually found a transcript of the letter that Alan wrote the doctor when he explained that he knew who the babysitter killer was. I'm going to read it to you. Just keep in mind that it is riddled with spelling errors and stuff like that. I guess he wasn't very educated. But it says, I tell you what makes him do it. It Vietnam. We were there, we there together, Frank and me. Oh, Frank, not his real name. I call him that here. Nam screw up your mind too. Tell you something else. He kills lots of little kids. Tell you something else. He killed lots of little kids then with medals for it. Burn them to death. Bomb them with napalm. It's real beautiful there, Doc. He wants the rich people, like people in Birmingham, to suffer like all of us suffered to get nothing back for what we did for our country. He's not a monster like you think. He really loves children, especially that little girl. For 3 weeks, not doing it because he hates children's, but doing it because he hates everybody else out there. And this is his way to get even and get back at everybody. That was the transcript of the letter that was written to Dr. Danto. But back to our suspects here. So Archibald Edward Sloan, he became a suspect when hair samples were discovered in his Pontiac Bonneville, and those samples also matched hair that was found on the bodies of Mark Stebbin and Timothy King. Unfortunately, the hair samples didn't match any of the other victims, and it was believed that Sloan often lent his car to his friends who happened to also be pedophiles. Go figure. Another suspect, believe it or not, was actually John Wayne Gacy. People believe that when Timothy King was abducted, he was one of the men that partook in the abduction of Timothy, because it's believed that more than one person helped, in a way to get coax Timothy into their vehicle. But a bunch of DNA tests were ran in 2013, and it came back that Gacy was not a part of any of these murders. So Theodore Lamborghini was also a suspect. He was a retired auto worker. At the time, he was considered the top suspect around March of 2007, I believe, yeah. And so he had already been picked up for like 15 sex-related counts with young boys. So the investigator at the time basically said, hey, if you take a polygraph test, and what tipped them off is that he was involved in another sex ring. I think he was also involved in the North Fox Island ring. But at the time, he looked at it. He had a bunch of photos of boys that were being abused and stuff, and he looked at one of the photos and said to his friend, hey, this looks like the King kid, doesn't it? And gave him a wink. So that guy turned him in. Gave police that tip. So the detective at the time working the babysitter killer case told Lamborghini and was like, if you take a polygraph test in regards to these killings, the babysitter killer murders, I will allow you to go to any prison you want in the United States, and you'll be given a fake name, a fake jacket. This is what they have in prison, which basically says what your crimes were and stuff like that. And you can go to any prison you want. It doesn't matter. Any prison you want, as long as you take a polygraph test for these the babysitter killer murders. And Lamborghini basically said, I didn't kill those kids, but I refuse to take a polygraph test. So he took the brunt end of his 15 counts of sexual misconduct with a minor, or sex acts against a minor. So now we move on to Chris Bush, and that name may sound a little bit familiar because I briefly mentioned him in my first video about the OG pedophile island that was happening in the same time in the same area. So Chris Bush is believed, is now basically, when this case is brought up, he's believed to be suspect number one. It's believed that Bush was actively operating in a very large-scale pedophile ring. His dad was a very high executive of General Motors, and when Timothy King was abducted, Chris Bush was actually already in jail for pedophilia-related charges, but it's believed that he did not work alone. It's believed that he had an accomplice by the name of Vincent Gunnels. Now, it's believed that Chris had sexually abused Vincent at a very early age and continued to groom him, and eventually Vincent became Chris's partner in crime in helping him abduct young boys. So in November of 1978, Chris commits suicide. Now, the nature of death raises a whole bunch of questions. It said that he shot himself in the head with a rifle, but instead of, how one would shoot themselves in the head with a rifle, be it under the chin or in the mouth. Apparently, he was struck right between the eyes, so he would have had to raise the rifle up and shoot himself like that. Also, no gunshot residue was found anywhere on his corpse, and you would know if he had shot himself, there would be gunshot residue on his head, on his hands, something of the nature, but there was none found on his corpse. And he was found wrapped neatly under his sheets, and like I said, he shot himself directly between the eyes with a rifle, and there were 4 shell casings found in his room. So Barry King, Timothy King's father, filed a lawsuit under the Freedom of Information Act to get the documents of the investigation of Chris Bush's suicide. And upon conclusion, it was shown that there were pieces of bloody rope found in Chris's room, and all of the victims, including Mark Stebbins and Timothy, had visible signs of like rope burn, stuff like that, where they had been bound when they were abducted. Among the more unsettling things, this photo was found in Chris Bush's room as well. Now, this photo resembles has a very shocking resemblance to Mark Stebbins, and I'll put the two side by side. And it's also said that in this photo he had drew this child with his hood up and screaming in agony. So this picture was drawn while this child was being abused. And something to note is that the hood is up, which, Mark being found with his hood up, and after he was dead, and like I said, these bodies were found quite quickly after they had been dumped. That was not public information, so he had to have either been enacting this abuse or, sketching it as it was going on. Now, like I said, Chris's dad was an extremely wealthy higher up in General Motors, and was, I can only imagine, extremely connected. So he never spent any time for his previous charges of sexual misconduct with minor young boys. And then it said that the bloody rope that was found in Chris Bush's room, just disappeared. It just vanished. Nobody knows where it went. So it was likely it was either destroyed to protect their family name, or misplaced evidence. And I put that in air quotes because come on now. Like, it had to have been destroyed to protect a family's name. It's also speculated that Vincent Gunnels, Chris's partner in crime, had shot him and then used the picture, put the picture of the boy there, as well as the bloody rope, to kind of, steer them in Chris's direction so they wouldn't go and further investigate and possibly uncover that Vincent Gunnels was also a part of this operation. Now, like I said, it hasn't been proven, but traces of Gunnels' hair had been found on the body of Kristen Malik. It's highly likely that Vincent and Chris both worked in tandem to abduct abduct these children because, like I said, Chris was grooming him from a very early age to basically be his little helper in crime when it came to abducting these children. So just to do a recap now, so we had multiple children murders. Only the male children were sodomized with a foreign object. They all fit the same MO. They were smothered, they were asphyxiated, they were death by asphyxiation, sorry. They were bound, they all had rope burns on them. Only one of them was murdered in a very gruesome way, which was Jill Robinson, who was shot in the face point blank with a 12-gauge shotgun. What made them such a high-profile case is that one of these kids were just up and disappearing like that. And they were being neatly laid out in the snow. Another name for these murders is also the snow killing, so if you want to research them more, you can. They were being neatly laid out in the snow as if the murderer had wanted to pose them. They were all cleaned, they were bathed, their hair was cut, their nails were clipped. Even Timothy, his last meal was KFC, and that was directly after his parents did a press release where his mom stated that she just wanted him to come home so she could feed him his favorite meal, which was KFC. Officially, no one was convicted for these murders. Like I said, it's believed that Chris Bush is the suspect because is the killer because he was already a very well-known pedophile. It is believed that two individuals had worked to abduct these kids, because how would he have such a success rate getting these kids to get in his car after looking the way he does, because he just looks like a fucking creep. So it's believed that him and Vincent worked together, and at the time Vincent would have been a young boy, which would have been easier to convince these kids to get in the car because he's another young kid, which, it would make them feel safe seeing another kid in the car as well. And that they both work in tandem because Chris Bush was grooming Vincent from an early age. Chris Bush commits suicide, and in Chris's room they find the bloody rope, they find the drawing of who appears to be Mark Stebbins, and it's kind of heartbreaking because I was watching a Dark Minds on this as well, and the guy's interviewing Mark Stebbins' brother, and he's like, what do you think of this photo that was found in Chris Bush's, house? And Mark Stebbins' brother is like, I don't want to look at that, and the Dark Minds guy is like, okay, well, what do you think about it? And he was like, I've seen the photo, that's my brother. He was like, I know. He was like, I can tell that the agony in his face, and he was in hell for those days that he was captured and before he was killed. So it's kind of like heartbreaking, but again, Chris committed suicide, even though he somehow shot himself point blank between the eyes with a rifle. There was no blood spatter that indicated that. He was neatly tucked in his sheets, and the rifle, I'll post the rifle, the way it was placed, it just seems off. You can look at the crime scene photo for yourself and tell me what you think. But as of now, no one's been convicted, and Timothy King's father is still actively working to try to uncover new evidence that would either convict somebody or lead to say directly that Chris Bush did do this. So these murders, like I said, have been they haven't been officially linked to the Babysitter Killer, but it's believed that they are. Some of them don't really fit the Babysitter Killer's MO, but if you look at different websites and stuff about this case, you'll find these names. Like I have the names from unsolvedcasebook.com here, and I'm just going to read them off because I feel like if I'm going to do this murder and I'm going to talk about this murder, even if these people are not confirmed victims, we should still acknowledge that it is a possibility that they could be victims. We have Donna Sarah, who is 16 years old and disappeared September 29th, 1972, and October 20th, 1972, just 5 days after what would have been her 17th birthday, her body was found in her hometown of Ray Township, just off 27 Mile Road, laying face down in a shallow creek. Her case remains unsolved. We have Jane Allen, 13 years old, went missing on August 8th, 1976. She was last seen hitchhiking between Pontiac, where her boyfriend's home was, and Royal Oak, which was where her home was in Oakland County. the police didn't really seem concerned because she had a history of running away. But her body was found floating down the river in Miamisburg, Ohio, over 200 miles away from her Royal Oak home. We have Kimberly King. She was 12 years old. She was at a friend's house in Warren, Michigan, having a sleepover on September 15th, 1979. And around 11 p.m., she snuck out of the house to use the payphone to call her sister, which her sister instructed her to get back in the house, and she was never seen again after that. And her case is believed to be linked to the Oakland City killer or the Babysitter killer. So we have 10-year-old Amy Mihilovic. I think that's how you say her last name. She went missing from a shopping mall in Bay Village, Ohio in October 27, 1989. On February 8th, 1990, her remains were found in Ashland County, Ohio. She was bludgeoned to death and stabbed numerous times. And it's said that the MO and the gap in time is what is believed to link her, even though there was a bit of a distance there, is still believed to link her to the Babysitter killer. The MO is a little different here, but as we saw with his his confirmed victims, he brutally murdered the women that the young girls that he abducted. So that is the story of the Babysitter killer. Like I said, I apologize for our little different scenery here, but we just wanted to talk about some murder today. So go ahead and leave a comment down in the comment section if there's a murder that you want me to cover, if there's something you found out about this murder or something, because I'm not always right. I do a lot of research, but sometimes my wires get crossed. So we may have to do a little correction corner or something. Next week, we've got the Toy Box Killer coming up, which is an extremely up case, but we're going to do it anyways because that's what we're here for and that's what you want to hear. Like I said, if you enjoy this content, give me a like and a subscribe. I have a Discord server now that we all hop on and hang out with each other and talk to each other. I've got some merch coming out soon. We're just working with some print shops right now to see which is going to be our best avenue of approach on that. And I appreciate you guys' support so much. It means the absolute world to me. I need to get this edited so I can get it to you on Sunday, which is, when you're seeing this, it's going to be today because I'm going to get it done. So I appreciate the support that you guys have been giving me. I don't know. I just think that I feel like I'm so boring. So when people tell me that my stories, that the way I tell these stories interests them, really means a lot to me. Because God, listening to my own voice when I'm editing, I'm like, God, I fucking fall asleep to this guy. So I'm glad you guys enjoy it. Like I said, next week we're going to be doing the Toy Box Killer, which is an extremely up situation. I cannot stress enough how disturbing that case is. So I hope to see you there. Like I said, if there's a murder you want to have covered, leave it down in the comments. I'm going to be linking an email address, I'm going to be putting an email address in this bio where you can write me any kind of story you want. It can be something you're proud of. It can be a paranormal story. It can be a crime story that you saw or was involved in or happened where you live, something like that. And I will start reading those on my lives, like my Twitch streams, my TikTok lives. I will also be creating YouTube videos of me reading out your letters. So I would love to hear from you guys. I'm all about engaging with, my people who follow me, and it's my all-time favorite thing to do. So please give me some stories to read, and please, when you write the stories, tell me if you want me to say your full name or not, because I will respect your privacy and have you go under anonymous or something like that. But thanks so much for stopping by, guys. Get ready for the Toy Box Killer next week. I hope to see you then.